subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is JT Sports. Now, if you are somebody who is really into fantasy football or you cover it for a living, this is the time of the offseason where you start to see a lot of these fantasy football people release their positional rankings, top 10 quarterbacks, running backs, receiver, etc., etc. And they also give you a list of players to target in the later rounds of the draft who potentially could be breakout studs or potential sleepers. And Travis Etienne has been on a lot of these breakout / sleeper lists in fantasy football. So this kind of motivated me to make this segment because a lot of people in the fantasy football world, they look at things from just a fantasy football standpoint and they don't really understand what role that player is going to have in a particular offense. So I kind of wanted to give some of you fantasy football guys watching this a little bit of insights into how Jacksonville could be using Travis Etienne this season. And also, if you're a Jaguar fan and you're trying to figure out what's up with all the Travis Etienne hype, or even if you're not a Jaguar fan and you're just interested in figuring out what Travis Etienne is going to be this season, I'm glad that you're tuning in to this segment. So for Travis Etienne, we already know that he was drafted in the first round of the 2021 NFL draft out of Clemson, along with his quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, who also was his quarterback at Clemson. And during his time for the Tigers, he was probably the most explosive back in all of college football. He has great speed, great contact balance. He has a good blend of finesse and power. But something that was really underrated in his game was how good he was in the passing game. And a lot of people overlook what he did in the receiving game for Clemson over his career. He caught 102 career receptions and had over 1,000 total receiving yards during his time under Dabo Swinney with the Tigers. Now, he didn't play last season. He only played in the preseason. He got injured before the regular season started, so we didn't really get to see what Urban Meyer had planned for him. But during the course of training camp, mini camp, and whatnot in 2021, there were a lot of reports about the Jaguars trying to use him all over the field. He was lining up in the slot. He also potentially could have been used as a returner on kickoffs or punts. So going into 2022, under Doug Peterson, some people are wondering if the same thing is still going to be in the place to happen. And I think it definitely will. Doug Peterson is no stranger to having running backs of this skill set on his team. I don't know if a lot of you guys remember the Eagles Super Bowl run when they defeated the New England Patriots, but he had a running back on that team named Corey Clement. Now, Corey Clement, he didn't have an extremely big role, but he had a small impact on that offense during that Super Bowl run for Philadelphia. He also caught a touchdown in that Super Bowl win against New England as well. So for Travis Etienne, you're going to be seeing him lined up in the slot. And with him being inserted into the slot, that's probably going to bounce Christian Kirk outside as well. He's probably going to line up on the opposite side of Marvin Jones. And by lining him up in the slot, it brings a different dimension to the offense because he probably is going to be a mismatch for the majority of linebackers who are going to try to cover him, because I don't think there's too many linebackers in the NFL that are great in man-to-man coverage. So for him lining up in the slot, if he gets matched up against a linebacker, that's a winnable matchup because he is most likely going to be able to win that due to his route running, his hands, and plus his speed. And even if you line him up against a defensive back, if you get him out in the open field, one-on-one against a cornerback or a safety, you like his chances because we already know how great he is with the ball in his hands. I mean, he's a running back playing wide receiver, so of course he's going to be really good when it comes to making things happen after the catch. And then on top of that, we also have to talk about what he's going to do in the run game department for the Jaguars, because the run game last year wasn't really all that great. And it was mainly because Urban Meyer just refused to utilize James Robinson for some strange reason. So with James Robinson's injury status kind of being up in the air, we don't know when he's going to be able to return fully healthy. The timetable for his return from injury is all over the place. Some people expect him to be back during some point during training camp. Some people don't think he's going to be able to play until some point early into the regular season. So if James Robinson isn't ready to go week 1 for Jacksonville, we're most likely going to see Travis Etienne get the bulk load of the carries, and Raquel Armstead maybe end up being the second running back behind him. So if you're thinking about a group of running backs who have a similar skill set to Travis Etienne, think of Austin Eckler with the LA Chargers, Alvin Kamara with the New Orleans Saints. Travis Etienne fits that build, but he's better from a talent standpoint than those guys. He may not be as polished as a receiver as Alvin Kamara is, but he definitely is developing that side of his game. However, he's faster than Alvin Kamara, and he also has really good size. This is not a small back. I mean, he's 5'10", 215 pounds, so he's pretty physical. And during minicamp and OTAs, a lot of people have been coming up to him and asking, hey, how the Jaguars going to use you this year? And he pretty much has said that his goal is that he hopes that he can be used in the same way that the 49ers used Deebo Samuel. Now, a lot of people may be a little bit turned off by that because you currently see the situation that Deebo is in right now. San Francisco, he wants to get traded because he doesn't want to be used as a running back anymore. He just primarily wants to be used as a receiver. And they actually have a defined term for these kind of players who play wide receiver and running back. They call them a wide back. So for Travis Etienne, the difference between him and Deebo Samuel is going to be that Travis Etienne is a running back that's going to be lining up at wide receiver, not a wide receiver lining up at running back. So he's going to be able to handle some of that contact as that comes with being a running back in the NFL. And also he's going to be really good on the outside as a receiver inside of the slot. So one thing that really stands out about Travis Etienne is that he has phenomenal contact balance. And it's easy to think of somebody who just has great speed as somebody who's just a finesse player, but he's also really powerful. So for Jacksonville, if they plan on implementing outside zone concepts into their run game, or if they want to run a lot of power and run him up the middle, he's capable of being able to handle that kind of workload and being in that kind of offense. So I don't really think there's too much that Travis Etienne cannot do. We obviously know that he's going to be their full-time 3-down back. Even when James Robinson comes back fully healthy, we're probably still going to see Travis Etienne being on the field more than James Robinson when it comes to the snap count. And James Robinson, I think, is a pretty underrated pass catcher in his own right, but he doesn't kind of have the explosiveness that Travis Etienne has. And that's something that Jacksonville was really lacking on the offensive side of the football last year. They didn't really have too many explosive playmakers. I mean, you had Marvin Jones, and that was pretty much about it. Now, James Robinson is a playmaker, but I wouldn't count him as explosive. I just think that he's just really good. He's a tough runner in between the tackles. I wouldn't count him as explosive. So you bring in Christian Kirk. You bring somebody else who does bring a little bit of explosiveness there. You also have Evan Ingram. But the best playmaker on the offense right now probably has to be Travis Etienne. So for Jacksonville, regardless of when James Robinson comes back, if you are somebody who is watching this because you're interested in seeing his value when it comes to a fantasy football standpoint, don't let the committee turn you off, because he's still going to get more snaps and he's still going to be on the field way more than James Robinson, simply for the fact that he's going to be utilized in a way different capacity. And on top of that, when it comes to a PPR standpoint, he's going to be a monster. If Jacksonville can actually find a way to get him the ball, which I'm speculating that they're probably going to be utilizing him a lot on short intermediate routes, so we're probably going to be seeing him run a lot of slants, drags, probably some bubble screens on the outside, just trying to utilize his quickness and get him out into the open field as fast as possible. Because once you have somebody of this size and this speed coming at you as a cornerback and a defensive back, you're going to have a pretty difficult time tackling him. And we already know that a lot of these cornerbacks and a lot of these safeties entering the league now aren't really great tacklers. They kind of pick and choose when they want to get involved and trying to bring somebody down. So from a fantasy football standpoint, I don't really know what his ADP is at the moment, but I think a fair value for him probably would be around round 4, round 5. Some people may end up taking him a lot earlier than that, but if you can get him in round 4, that's definitely a big bargain, because you have somebody that, like I mentioned, is still going to get more snaps than James Robinson. You have somebody that's going to bring you a lot. So think of Alvin Kamara, but somebody who possibly could be better in a sense when it comes to durability, being able to stay on the field, and plus you can also use him in short yardage situations if Jacksonville feels comfortable enough doing that with him. So that's my thoughts on how the Jacksonville Jaguars potentially will use Travis Etienne this season. Let me know some other additional thoughts that you guys have on Etienne going into the 2022 NFL season down in the comment section down below.